Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you might be around the world, and welcome to a very impromptu little stream that I thought I would do. We're basically going to be talking about Alexander Boris Johnson, the watermelon green cuck who claims to be a conservative, and some of his ideas about getting Britain to net zero emissions, as if that matters, given that Britain is way under 1% of emissions already. But before we do that, I'm going to play us a little tune, bit of a palate cleanser after reading about Alexander Boris Johnson and his vile thought of a wife. So we'll do that first.
Cheer up, my lads, 'tis to glory we steer, to add something more to this wonderful year. To honor we call you as free men, not slaves, for who are so free as the sons of the waves? Hearts of all our ships, jolly tons on our men, we always are ready, steady, boys, steady. We fight and we conquer again and again. We never see our foes, but we wish them to stay. They never see us, but they wish us away. If they run, why we follow and run them ashore. For if they will fight us, what can we do more? Hearts of oak are our ships, jolly tars are the men, we always are ready, steady, boys, steady. We fight and we conquer again and again. We'll still make them feel and we'll still make them feel, and draw them on shore as we draw them at sea. Then cheer up, my lads, within one heart let us sing. Oh, soldiers, oh, sailors, oh, statesmen and king, heart of oak are our ships, jolly tars are our men, we always are ready, steady, boys, steady. We fight and we conquer again and again.
Okay, so that was Hearts of Oak, which is the march of the British Royal Navy. Anyway, this is a very impromptu stream, gents. I see one or two people asking in the chat why I'm doing it. Well, I'm doing it because there was an article published on the internet on the British government UK site called Net Zero: Principles for Successful Behaviour Change Initiatives. Now, if you go to the British site, the British government, UK government site, and look for this, what you will find is this. And if you make your screen larger, you can see So what it says is this page has been removed because it was published in error. Well, laughing my ass off, yeah, I guess it probably was, to be honest. So anyway, let's have a look at this article. And what this article is, just to explain to people who are listening, is it was a think tank that was put together by the British government that was looking at, including at the ways that the British government had used lockdowns and semi-forced vaccination initiatives over the China virus to try and force British people into accepting all the stuff that Britain being a net zero carbon producer will mean, which basically really, if you want to bring it down to the really basic stuff, is you won't be allowed to eat meat hardly at all if you're an ordinary pleb, not if you're Boris Johnson or one of the so-called, in inverted commas, elites, but if you're an ordinary pleb, you'll hardly be allowed to eat meat. And one of the main ways they're going to stop that is that they're going to make it so expensive you will not be able to afford it. They basically want to turn you into vegetarians. And they want you to use short-range electric cars that mean you really can't travel anywhere. But of course, that's all been trialed under the China virus as well. And they also want to stop you flying overseas very much because, you know, but of course, none of that, not one thing of that is going to affect our governing elites like Boris Johnson and his vile watermelon green thought of a wife. None of that is going to affect any of those people. They'll still be able to do exactly what they want. And go anywhere and do anything and eat meat as much as they want and travel on fast jets as much as they want. It's only going to affect you 21st century plebs, you 21st century serfs who they want to live in the pod and eat the grass or the bugs and own nothing and somehow or another be happy. But this is really what they want. And this British government document, which we're going to go over in a minute, was really just a little glimpse into what Alexander Johnson really wants for the ordinary plebs of Britain. And it ain't nice. And you know what? Don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely convinced that the Labour Party would be exactly the same. Like, I don't necessarily think they'd be much worse on most of this, but they would be they wouldn't be any better. You've got to avoid both of the major parties and obviously the Social Democrats and obviously the Greens to avoid any of this. This is why this is coming down the road towards us like a giant steel fist that is going to be very, very difficult for ordinary people to avoid, because we have to avoid all of those parties if we want to avoid it. And I'm not sure we can, to be honest. I think it's extremely disturbing. Anyway, let's go have a little look at this document, shall we? I would suggest, guys, that you put your screen to full screen if you want to look at this, because otherwise you won't be able to read along with me very easily. So here we are. Now, as I said, if you go to the UK government website, totally unsurprisingly, in my view, this was very quickly removed because they didn't want the 21st century serfs seeing what they really had in store for them. So, yeah, let's have a little look at this document, shall we? How do I need to do this? Here we go. So as I say, put your screen on full screen so you can't see the chat, and you'll be able to actually look at this stuff fairly clearly. Net zero principles for successful behaviour change initiatives. Key principles from past government-led behaviour change and public engagement initiatives. And when they talk about past government-led behaviour change and public engagement initiatives. They are principally talking about the China virus lockdowns and the push for forced vaccinations. Okay? I'm going to go through this fairly slowly so that if you want to, you can stop your screen and actually read stuff that you might want to read. You'll notice Crown copyright 2021. There you go. I might get a copyright strike for this. Who knows? But that also means it is British government. So here we go. Here's the comments. Introduction, methodology, blah, 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 blah. This is not going to be a long stream, guys. You can all see the link. And I'll probably put it in the description if I can. So if anyone really wants to go through this whole document, they absolutely can. But what I'm going to do is just go over some of the main points. Now, one thing I would say is, where did this start? Well, where it all started was when they banned people smoking in pubs. This is where all of this started. When you agreed to that, because you weren't a smoker, a bit like, people talk about this sort of thing. I wasn't a smoker, so I didn't object. And it wouldn't ruin pub culture, but in fact, not only did it ruin pub culture, it's destroyed pub culture. There is no pub culture anymore. Pubs are basically down-level eating houses these days. When you allowed that, then you brought in all of this other stuff because you said, the government can tell us what we can do in non-government facilities. And so, blame yourself, guys. You should. Much of it is your own fault because you didn't have a problem with when they were telling smokers what to do, but now you're having a problem. Piss and alcohol instead of smoke, Dave Burgesson says in the chat. Yeah. I mean, when I was a young man and I went into the pub, like when I was like maybe 17, 18 years old with my dad, it was my dad and his mates having chats. And they were drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. And you know what? There was nothing wrong with that. It was their choice. It wasn't anything to do with the government. I don't understand anyone who thinks it was. But anyway, the weight of evidence shows the information alone is often inadequate to significantly change population behavior. There will be some exceptions when sustainable behaviors are relatively easy and acceptable to the public. And therefore, we do argue for Principle 8, the importance of building a narrative which is fair, highlights the many co-benefits of net zero action, and is positive. The research shows outperforms admonishment, anxiety, or guilt framing. So in other words, make people feel good for going for net zero rather than slagging them off. Like I said, guys, I'm going through this slowly. You can stop it and read it if you want to. I'm only going to bring out a few of the main points. I just thought that this particular thing was worth bringing up. Now, here we go. 4.1, diet change. Okay, this is really quite a big one if you're a British person or anyone else, because I'm sure that, our globalist governments are doing this around the world. So anyway, to quote, food consumption is largely automatic. I'm not sure that's true. Habit-based behavior, strongly driven by cues in our physical, social, and price environment. Evidence shows that altering this choice environment is more effective than prompting or imploring people to adopt sustainable diet choices. This suggests effective diet-related policy will lie at the intersection of our upstream and midstream principles, with a lesser role for a downstream intervention. Through awareness raising, though awareness raising may not be wasted given evidence that public understanding of climate impacts of food is poor. Without restricting choice, Their most promising interventions would include making sustainable options more prominent and available within canteens, restaurants, menus, and supermarkets. Now, what they mean, guys, in case you don't realize by that, is basically having like 10 vegetarian choices for every one meat choice you might have. That's literally what they mean by that. Where governments can't directly mandate this, now notice they say where governments can't directly mandate this, and let's be honest, like we've just had 2 years of governments directly mandating that we're not even allowed to move outside of our house. So don't take that as meaning very much. Where governments can't directly mandate this, acting upstream can nonetheless incentivize it. For instance, directly incentivizing producers to reformulate high carbon products, e.g., a carbon equivalent of the successful UK sugar levy. And as everyone I hope in the UK knows, that's basically making sugar much more expensive for people who want to buy it than it used to be. So basically, they're just saying tax the share out of meat. That's really what they're saying. Driving competition between retailers by creating environmental ratings for supermarkets. So, in other words, a supermarket that has less meat will get a higher rating than one that has more meat. And, like, no doubt, some morons will then go and use it. Or indeed, leading by example within public canteens in hospitals, schools, courts, and government buildings. They don't mention in this particular bit, but they do in other bits, also British prisons, where they want people to have more vegetarian food and less red meat. So, yeah, this is like really nasty stuff, guys, and this is what's coming down the road to you. And what I think they're talking about here, and I'm not an idiot, is you're talking about meat going up in price by way more than double. So that they're trying to force you to take vegetarian food. This is what they're talking about there. Now, home energy. Decarbonising home energy use will largely be achieved through encouraging costly one-off switches to more efficient technologies or retrofits. Notice they say costly because, like, it is really costly to do that. E.g., solar panels, insulation, or heat pumps. Like, none of those things, either on their own or in combination, will actually make your heating cheaper. All of them will make it more expensive. Let's be clear about this. Yeah. Insulation, yeah, sure, that might make you a bit cheaper. Solar panels in the UK, UK is noted for its many, many hours of sunshine, of course. And heat pumps, yeah. None of that is going to make your energy cheaper. It's all going to be more expensive, apart from the insulation. Upfront costs are therefore a major barrier, and while research and development and the industry investment might ultimately bring costs down, significant consumer incentives will be necessary to drive earlier adoption. So in other words, you're going to have to give people grants to do it, which of course has been going on for years, and most people still haven't because it's still more expensive than it's worth doing. Research also shows that energy efficiency adoption behaviors are often rife with small frictions and cognitive barriers such as risk aversion, procrastination, uncertainty over supply legitimacy, and hassle of insulation, which should be addressed. Because all of those things are absolutely true, of course. In contrast to adoption behaviors, smaller habit changes, such as turning down the thermostat, i.e. being colder in the winter, which is like great for old age pensioners particularly. I mean, I think old age pensioners really should just not have any heating at all, and they should just die every winter. Get rid of them. Why not? I mean, apparently, we've shut the whole nation down to stop old age pensioners from getting the China virus. But in terms of for green policy, we should just let them all die because, well, that'd be green. And yeah, I am taking the piss, but I'm not really. I mean, this is really what we're talking about. Difficult. Looking at our downstream interventions, the hearts and minds battle would therefore be better directed towards building public acceptance for a bold policy, such as a future ban on fossil fuel boiler replacements. So, in other words, you can't replace your coal or gas or oil boiler. What a good idea. Don't you think that's a good idea, guys? I just think that's so conservative. It's unbelievable. How can anyone not vote for Alexander Boris Johnson after reading those words? Aviation. Now, here we go. Now, bear in mind, gents, that for gents and ladies, that for the vast majority of us plebs, if we want to travel abroad, either for a holiday or because we have to, or because we want to go and visit relatives overseas. And British people particularly have many relatives overseas in countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, etc. That's flying. So here we go. So for the most part, individuals' flying behavior is likely to be quite inelastic. Well, yeah, but bear in mind, over the last, 6 to 12 months, probably a bit more than that, a lot of people haven't been allowed to fly anywhere because of the China virus. So I wouldn't take this as being what the government think they can get away with now, but this was recently. Expecting the British public to forego holidays abroad would be an enormous political challenge. You notice they don't say that you shouldn't do that, because, if the British people want to go and have holidays abroad, they should be allowed to. They just say it's an enormous political challenge. This is our globalist Alexander Boris Johnson overlords speaking here with his plan for net zero. But you can bet your bottom dollar that the one person who will not be stopped, anyone in the British government will not be stopped from flying overseas every time they want. The CCC's recommended reductions in demand are therefore likely to come from three sources. First, disincentives, e.g. higher tax. In other words, what you do is you make flying very expensive, so less and less people can afford it. And more poorer people can't afford to fly. That may be the most effective for frequent business flyers, which is absolute bollocks, of course, because it won't affect them. It will affect poorer people. Particularly now that many businesses are accustomed to using teleworking facilities, so an easy substitute option exists. Second, big infrastructure investment to provide better substitutes for holidays, i.e. long-distance train travel. But, Britain is a relatively small island with at least 65 million people on it, which the Conservative government of Alexander Johnson and the Labour government of whoever that Dwight is who's in charge of the Labour government at the moment want to increase with no limit. So there's going to be less and less places you could go on holiday in UK anyway. Third, for some holidaymakers, promoting domestic tourism may offer a more palatable route to reduced aviation demand. However, the route to net zero aviation may not be all about reduced demand, but by offsetting efficiency improvements, particularly over the medium term. Behavioral dimensions to this could include encouraging offsetting, for example, using defaults, de-shrouding the aviation market by displaying environmental impacts on comparison and booking websites. This has the potential to discourage operators from overfueling, underseeing, and mechanical upgrades, as well as driving research and development in biofuels and other advances. One of the other things it will do, guys, that they don't mention here, but they obviously plainly know, is it will probably reduce the amount of mechanics working on your aircraft and how safe those aircraft are. And also, already we've seen aircraft reduced from 4 engines to 2, mainly as a result of like saving fuel. If you're going to push that even further, you're probably going to end up with less and less safe aircraft. And flying has been quite safe for a long time now. But would I sooner be in a 2-engine aircraft or a 4-engine aircraft, or a 4-engine aircraft? Because a 4-engine aircraft can lose 2 engines and still land safely. A 2-engine aircraft can maybe do that on 1 engine. But, here we go. So let's have a look here at electric vehicles. Individuals rely on private vehicles to meet a variety of wants and needs, including commuting to work, tourism, and completing domestic or parenting duties. Decarbonizing mobility will require a blend of increased shared, e.g. public and active travel. In other words, less and less private cars. That's exactly what that means. Reduced travel, i.e. you're a 21st century serf, you're not allowed to travel anyway, and the electrification of the vehicle fleet. We focused on the electrification of the vehicle adoption as one element of this, which does not itself adhere to one of our key principles: provide an easy substitute to combustion vehicle use. However, barriers to rapid electric vehicle adoption remain. Ultimately, electric vehicles will need to be as convenient and affordable as combustion vehicles, if not better. But of course, they're not now, and there is no prospect of them being so in any foreseeable future. Like, none. Anyone who tells you they are is a green watermelon green moron, green on the outside and a red communist socialist on the inside. And I have to say, I think that now includes Alexander Boris Johnson and the modern British Conservative Party. But anyway, there we go. Including for the second-hand market. Of course, there is no second-hand market for electric vehicles at the moment because there are none virtually. Some upstream interventions have already been put in place, including a market mechanism to penalize combustion vehicle sales versus electric vehicle sales. In other words, once again, a big-time tax on the consumer. All of this stuff, you will know, if you pay any attention, really ultimately results on a big-time tax on the consumer. This will incentivize manufacturers' research and development and marketing efforts towards electric vehicles, meaning they increasingly feel like the obvious choice for consumers, like dumb idiot consumers who don't really look. The government can also create an enabling environment, including provision of subsidies until electric vehicles are closer to price parity, which they know are at the moment, and supporting higher density of charging infrastructure. At the moment, of course, the entire British national grid could not support most people in the UK having electric vehicles. There simply would not be enough power available. And everything Alexander Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party are doing to achieve net zero is actually reducing the British national grid of energies and electricity. It's reducing what they can provide. So actually it's getting worse, not better, while he wants to, when I say he, Alexander Boris Johnson and his watermelon green fot of a wife, want to make everyone in the UK pay for their moronic green ideas. This will be particularly important for some demographics, including those without off-street parking, which includes, of course, every single person who lives in a flat, for example. Anyway, I'm just going to go through this slowly so you gents can read it if you would like to. So this is what Alexander Johnson's Build Back Better, which should have a 666 in front of instead of the B's. But Alexander Johnson, supposed conservative Prime Minister, has Build Back Better. Joe Biden in America, who is a supposed left-wing Democrat, as well as being like, totally gaga, he also has Build Back Better. Angela Merkel in Germany used to have Build Back Better. That strange little man Macron in France, he has Build Back Better. And the World Economic Forum are the people who push Build Back Better, as does the United Nations, of course. So, all I would say with all of this is that where is Alexander Johnson being a conservative at all? What is conservative about this policy? Nothing. It is going to result ultimately in ordinary British people, not him and not his government ministers and not any of the elites in Britain, but it's going to result in ordinary British people being unable to afford to buy beef or pork or lamb, probably chicken as well. It's going to mean they're not going to be able to afford to do that. And in fact, they don't even talk about people switching to fish. They talk about people absolutely switching to vegetarian diets. So it's going to lead ordinary British people into only being able to afford vegetarian food. It's going to lead ordinary British people into not being able to travel abroad, either for a holiday or to visit relatives overseas, because they won't be able to afford to. And it's going to lead ordinary British people not to be able to afford to heat their houses in the winter, because energy costs are going to go up 3, 4, 5 times and become almost totally unreliable. And it's also going to lead ordinary British people into not being able to have their own transport in terms of a car that they can travel around the country on or go across to Europe on, because they're going to have if they can afford them, they're going to have extremely expensive electric cars that are going to have very limited ranges. So if you like all this stuff, I can only suggest you carry on supporting Alexander Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party, or go and support Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, because they're no different, or you can go and support the Liberal Democratic Party, who are also no different, or you can support the Greens. What I really suggest people start to do, and I really suggest this strongly, is that people have got to start supporting real British, non-Nazi LARPing nationalist and populist parties. And those nationalist and populist parties, they must get together and at very least have some sort of pact where they don't run against each other at the next election. Because if we stick where we are now, the British people, amongst other people in the West, are going to become vastly poorer, and we are all going to become 21st century serfs. Alexander Boris Johnson, just like Keir Starmer of the Labour Party, basically wants ordinary British people to be 21st century serfs who live in the pod and eat the bugs and own nothing and are somehow or another happy. And that's all I've got to say on that, really. As I said, it wasn't going to be a long stream. But please go and check out the Net Zero Principles for Successful Behavioral Change Initiatives to see what your wonderful government has in store for you in UK. Dave Bergeron, everyone's called a Nazi. Nah, sorry. It's very, very easy to call Mark Collett a Nazi, but I think Mark Collett is a British government operative. I think one way or another, he's a British government asset, frankly. That's why he gets away with what he gets away with. And he's there to deliberately lead good nationalist or right of centre people in Britain down a cul-de-sac And I think that's what Marcolette and the patriotic alternative are there for. But that's only my opinion. You don't have to believe me. Anyway, I'm going to finish us up with a bit of a tune. This is the national anthem, but it includes the second verse of the national anthem, which you almost never hear played these days. Okay, folks, so that was the full British national anthem, which you almost never hear these days and haven't done for donkey's years. Do please go and look up net zero principles for successful behavioral change initiatives. That was from a think tank the British government put up. And don't forget to like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on Saturday evening UK time for the next Splendid Isolation show. Go off, folks.